Talk about self-will run riot.
Mm-hmm.
I was my own parent,
Mm-hmm. Me
and
too.
I could do whatever I wanted because nobody was watching.
Hmm.
And it's interesting. I read Sidney Poitier's autobiography, and he talks about his early years being on his own and getting in really dangerous scrapes and then getting himself out of them, and the kind of confidence that builds in a child.
Mm.
And I would
Mm-hmm.
do the same thing. I would like climb a tree and I'd get the highest spot because I'm a man, damn it. I'm
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because I was short and I was thin and I didn't want to be thought of as weak. But I
Right.
had a fear of heights.
Right.
So I
Also,
get up to
playgrounds
the
were dangerous when we were kids. They were not built with padding. They were like dangerous.
yes. Yeah.
The New York Times did an article recently about a playground in Germany. This sounds so German, that teaches children risk assessment.
What?
Oh my God.
It's a playground where you learn the dangers of heights
There
or
will be
heights.
consequences.
But there, you could fall in this playground. You could fall and get hurt. And do you remember, like when we were kids, that merry-go-round that spun around that was made out of metal?
I remember
Yes.
that.
And
Yeah.
if you got your head clocked by that, or you jumped on it the wrong
Yeah.
time, it's
The
certain
things
death.
we always heard about kids getting their heads cracked open on the cement because the
Mhm.
playgrounds weren't padded.
Right.
You fall off the jungle gym and your head cracked open like we
Yeah.
were little eggs.
So you say that kind of gave you a lot of confidence as a kid.
I think it does for any kid to survive something, to figure out how to survive a situation on your own gives you an inherent confidence, for better or worse. I mean,
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean, it would have been better if it hadn't come because of neglect.
Right. I was just
Right.
going to say that's kind of like the dichotomy of it, because on one hand, it of course gives you so much of this confidence to know that you can rely on yourself. But then at what point do you learn that you can't rely on other people, and how much does that impact the interpersonal relationships and ability to be interdependent with, other people?
Well, as I'm learning through therapy, that kind of neglect did affect my self-esteem
Yeah.
profoundly,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and a child's sense of self-worth. And even though I never thought of it as being a trauma, my therapist has said that's absolutely a trauma,
Yeah.
My therapist said the same thing.
I
Yes.
mean,
Because I
thanks.
minimize everything. I
Yes.
minimize it.
Yes.
Like things that are a really big deal, like, oh, that must have really hurt you. I will go, "Ugh, whatever, let's move on.
Yes.
Like, because that's how I was raised, that, okay, let me kiss it. Mwah, okay, go.
Yeah.
Because my parents had survived war. So anything a kid in the 70s could come up with, it's like, well, were you attacked by the Japanese today?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Were you
Yeah.
bayoneted in the eye? You weren't. So deal with it.
Well, which is problematic too, because trauma is not just the most extreme things, right? Like you're talking about, like real utter crisis. It can be anything where it feels as though that our sense of security is compromised at all. And it could literally be just having that kind of neglect that we're talking about that is traumatizing, that has a traumatic effect on our nervous system, and our body processes that as trauma. So yeah, it's trauma. I'm glad that we can validate that.
Now,
Isn't there
Laraine,
that-
when you say neglect, what does that look like as a kid? As like, let's say 10 years old.
Just nobody knows where I am.
Mhm.
Playing alone in my room, which of course, fostered my imagination and my ability to create a world for myself. I mean, definitely know that there was an asset to that in a lot of ways. But, it was also, my dad was away at work and my mother was doing anything she could to not be home and deal with us. And don't
Wow.
think I didn't take that personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
did. But,
course.
I have a twin brother, and for the first 4 years of our life, my mother was sick. She had gotten, hepatitis in the hospital
Oh,
when she
gosh.
delivered us. They gave her a hysterectomy because they were trying to deal with her depression.
They gave you hysterectomies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
that
know.
for women routinely. I mean, that was
Yeah.
like so archaic, but it was like she has the hysteria.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Give her
Oh, I
a
forgot to
hysterectomy.
say,
Yeah.
after us, she lost a baby.
Oh,
She delivered the baby and then it died.
Okay.
Our brother
So she's
Jimmy.
having to deal with 2 very young children at a time after having
And she's
experienced that trauma
grieving.
herself.
And she's
And
grieving and going
sick.
through depression.
And
right.
is having instant menopause.
Yeah.
You know, got like 32
Wow.
or something. So she was dealing with a lot.
That's a lot.
But she also was a very talented and creative person and probably shouldn't have been a parent.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I think that she was not interested in children.
Ugh.
And that was palpable.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I don't fault her. I know that she tried, and I know that we were loved.
Yeah.
It's just that there was a lot of damage.
Yeah, there's no way at an early age. As children, the world, the universe revolves around us. We personalize everything, good or bad. So when there's a lot of neglect that's happening, like you're describing, of course you're going to personalize that. It somehow feels like, why am I not enough for my parents to love me, to be able to kind of like be happy that I'm here, to want to be better or do better, and we make it about us.
Yeah.
Children have no way of not taking things personally.
Yeah,
there should be like a thing, like the new parenting thing is, don't take this personally. Get in a kid's face, Teamster style, with a cigarette, say, listen, this isn't about you. Relax. I'm going to tell you in advance what you're going to hear from your therapist 30 years from now. It's nothing personal. But what you're saying, Matthew, is true, is that children don't have the ability to process things of like, this isn't my fault, or I mean, everything's your fault as a kid.
Yeah, they haven't developed that part of their cognitive processing yet, where they can actually, kind of like step outside of themselves, be able to evaluate things that we're talking about as adults. We now have evidence that we can, point of references that we can get back to and remind ourselves to manage things.
I'm still just learning object permanence.
Yeah.